Let's talk about the differences between a stiff leg and Romanian deadlift. Spoiler alert, it's not the starting position. You can start either of these lifts from the rack or the floor. These are two movements that often get confused as one and the same, but there are some pretty noticeable differences between the two. This is a stiff leg deadlift, and as the name implies, you'll notice that Dan Green's legs are relatively stiff. They're as straight as they can possibly get. Now, there is a small bend in the knee, but ideally, if we could do these with a completely straight leg, that would be ideal. The purpose of a stiff leg deadlift is to take the quad out of the initiation of the lift, and we do that by straightening our leg as much as possible. This is a Romanian deadlift, and you'll immediately notice that there's a much more pronounced bend in the knee, and you'll also notice that a greater percentage of movement is occurring at the hips rather than the back. Let me illustrate that last point by using myself as an example. So in a stiff leg deadlift, my legs are completely stiff and they're completely locked. You'll notice from my hips down, very little movement occurs on the lift. I initiate the movement by bringing my chest down to the floor and going through the deadlift range of motion there. For a Romanian deadlift, I'll take a slight bend in the knee, and you'll notice that I initiate the lift not with my back, but with my hips. I shift my hips into flexion. This lengthens the hamstrings, and then as I initiate the concentric, this shortens the glutes. So again, stiff leg deadlift, all of the movement is occurring from the waist up. On a Romanian deadlift, all of the movement is occurring at the hips back. From my experience, the main difference between these two lifts is how they load the musculature. Both of these lifts hit the same target musculature. They both are going to be training the erectors, the hamstrings, and the glutes. But in the stiff leg, you're going to get a larger percentage of tension shifted into the erectors because the movement is occurring from the waist up and there's very little hip movement happening. In the Romanian deadlift, because the vast majority of the movement is occurring at the hips, that requires the hamstrings and the glutes to move your hips, and so you're shifting a greater percentage of load onto the glutes and hamstrings than the erectors. So which one should you do? Well, it depends what areas you're trying to improve. If you're really focused on your lower back erector thickness, I would do the stiff leg deadlift. And if you're trying to improve your glutes and or hamstrings, I would do the Romanian deadlift. Either way, no matter which one you choose, you are going to be training all three of those muscles, but it really depends on which one you are trying to prioritize over the other one.